This is a special presentation from WMBD News, Road to Reopening, a look ahead at the statewide recovery from COVID-19.
The COVID-19 pandemic started 15 months ago, forcing a shutdown across the state of Illinois.
Tomorrow, that all changes as June 11th marks the end of the pandemic-driven restrictions across the state. Good evening, and thank you for watching. I'm Shelby Roberts.
And I'm Mark Welp. Welcome to our special report, Road to Reopening.
Over the next hour, we'll be joined by our sister stations in Champaign, Rockford, and the Quad Cities to look ahead at the state fully reopening and what brought us to this point.
We'll share stories and roundtable discussions about vaccinations, the current state of healthcare, and our rebounding economy.
We'll also look at how the pandemic affected education and where schools are headed into the fall.
Our Capitol Bureau Chief Mark Maxwell will be sharing his exclusive interviews with the state's Director of Public Health, Dr. Ezike, and with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Here's a sneak peek of what the governor had to say.
I was just focused on saving lives. That's my job as governor, right? You run for office thinking I want to make people's lives better. You want people to be able to send their kids to college. You want people to be able to afford a home, a better job, a higher wage.
Nobody campaigns on a stay-at-home order.
Nobody campaigns thinking about a global pandemic is going to come and you're going to have to do things to keep people alive.
But first, where do we stand now? Let's head to WCIA in Champaign to take a look at how the COVID and vaccination numbers are trending statewide.
I'm really hoping we're going to get back to that point here soon.
Crane Alley General Manager Matthew Barca, one of the millions of Illinoisans and Americans putting the pandemic behind them. Memorial Day marked the first official holiday in more than a year most people didn't have to wear a mask. It was also a time more than half of American adults were fully vaccinated. That now includes nearly 11.5 million Illinoisans, creating a welcome sign to business owners.
It's a good feeling to be able to, get back to, Friday, Saturday nights having this place packed.
Up until the end of the bridge phase, this is what business looked like in Crane Alley and really across much of Illinois. But with an end in sight, customers and owners say they're relieved that's all about to change.
But now we got to go back to living a little.
As Illinois starts reopening, people like Dave Fairgo and Tom Ruckfuss enjoying crowds once again, feeling a bit safer after getting their vaccine.
I'm relieved that my immediate circle of friends have been vaccinated, and if other people don't want to get vaccinated, that's their problem.
You're not paying anything for them, and it's going to protect you, it's going to protect your family, it's going to protect your friends. We can get opened up even more the more people get vaccinated, so get vaccinated.
As more Illinoisans get vaccinated, our neighbors to the south falling behind, including these states sitting at nearly a third of their population. Also trending, more people changing their working lives, including job growth in fields like e-commerce, healthcare, online learning, even digital entertainment. While some people change paths, business owners also adapting to change and feeling more prepared should the coronavirus adapt or make a comeback.
Much easier transition the second time if it were to happen again. Don't get me wrong, I don't want it to happen again, but it would be much easier this time.
So we have case numbers going down and vaccination numbers going up, but we know that you have so many more questions. Joining me now, a panel of local health experts to get some answers. With me now, we have Julie Pride, who's the public health administrator at CU Public Health, Monica Hendrickson, Peoria City County Public Health Administrator, and Janet Hill, the CEO of the Rock Island County Health Department. Thank you so much for joining me today. Julie, we're going to start with you. Okay, so we heard case numbers, they're getting better. Last summer, they also were low, but then we had a surge. Are the number of people vaccinated going to help not have a surge like that again?
Well, yes. I mean, we always are going to see a dip in respiratory viruses in the summertime, but we do know that the vaccination is definitely helping. Our numbers are going down, but if you look at the data and you pull out, the number of vaccinated, you'll see that unvaccinated people are still getting infected. They're still becoming hospitalized, and unfortunately, we're still seeing deaths all around the country in persons who are unvaccinated. So we do need to keep getting the vaccination rates up higher so that we don't see that surge when everybody goes back in the fall.
Monica, let me ask some more vaccination questions I think people have. How long, I got vaccinated, how long is it going to last? Are we going to need a booster? Will the rollout be better next time if we do need another shot?
So I think those are all great questions. And the best way to answer is that time is going to tell. What we know is based on the scientific data that we have available, which gets more and more robust as we're able to experience longer times from those amazing individuals that volunteer to be in the vaccine studies, as well as the real life examples. And so right now we're seeing 6 months. We hope to see 9 months. And then the question about the booster, that is something that is on the table. Moderna is looking at that. And in terms of how it will be rolled out, we're hoping it'll be a little bit cleaner because we've now gone through the manufacturing process, the FDA process. So, we're not, creating it and shipping it out. It might be the fact that it's being able to be rolled out in a timely manner across, similar to flu, a lot of variety of places, whether it's pharmacies, hospital settings, your local health departments, or your FQHCs.
So I'm thinking companies are still making them in mass quantities. So if we do have to get another shot next year, maybe they'll be ready. Okay.
And there will only be one vaccine, and that will help. A booster, we won't have to have the 15-minute wait. So that will get health departments and other places back to doing it like we're used to with flu shots, where you get the vaccine and you're on your way. So that will also help.
Okay. All right. Janet, what about people who are traveling this summer, right? All we've been hearing is, okay, phase 5 starts tomorrow. No restrictions. We can go. Janet, a lot of people might be traveling with children who aren't vaccinated. What kind of advice do you have for them?
That's a really tricky question for families. If you have, a family member who's not vaccinated yet, I think you still need to take some precautions. We know that children have asymptomatic symptoms, and we know that sometimes kids can get other people infected. We just need the people who can get vaccinated to be vaccinated.
Okay, that definitely seems to be a theme coming from this panel for sure. Julie, when, in your opinion, when can we say we are past the pandemic, we are done with this, we've made it to the other side?
Well, technically, when a pandemic ends, it's ended by the World Health Organization because they're who calls the pandemic. But, we will be worrying less about this, let's say, and, back to normal once we have enough people vaccinated. And really, for vaccinated people, things are getting back to normal. We're able to do things maskless. We're able to, travel safely, be around other people, not distance. But for those who don't vaccinate, this virus is going to continue circulating, and they will not be protected unless they are vaccinated or they have immunity.
So no magic answer when we can say, hey, the pandemic is over, everybody.
I think to add to Julie's point, we also have to recognize that we as a country are way ahead in the vaccination efforts. And as Julie mentioned, this is the World Health Organization that's going to make this call. And we have countries where they have less than 3% of their population vaccinated. And that's really risky even for us. We may think that's a different place, a different part of the world, but every time the virus moves to a different host, it has the ability to mutate. And so we want to make sure that we can get globally people vaccinated really quickly so that we get not only out of this pandemic, but we decrease the likelihood or the risk of this mutating and creating another thing that we have to address.
Last question, Janet, is there anything living through what you have lived through now that you would do differently, perhaps if there's another virus that takes hold like this one did?
I think that lessons learned at the state level will help us at the local level. The mass vaccination clinics were really effective. And I think that we need to understand that while public health is very local, there needs to be a federal response to help set the tone for everyone.
All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for your expertise. Definitely valuable information shared tonight. Thank you.
You're watching Road to Reopening, a special presentation from WMBD News.
I think a lot of people want to know, is the pandemic over?
No, that's a super important question. And it's really important that we make that clear that the pandemic is not over. We obviously are in a better situation here in Illinois. We have the lowest number of cases, the lowest test positivity that we've ever had in this entire COVID journey. We are going to be in a situation where we are more controlling it than the virus controlling us.
God forbid, but if this were to ever happen again, are we prepared?
I would say you always are better off, the second time around if you're willing to learn from what you've been through. And I think there have been so many teachable moments, so many lessons to learn that will be things that will help us be better prepared for the next pandemic, which won't be 100 years from now.
Was there ever a realistic chance to contain the coronavirus or stop it from getting out? And if so, where did we miss that?
Of course, hindsight is 20/20, but when we were identifying that first case, that second case, clearly there were already cases, in the state before those first identified cases. It's not like, we identified a case on January 24th, and that individual had come directly from the hotspot, which was Wuhan. I'm sure on that plane were hundreds of others. So we clearly missed people who must have had it, who may have been circulating in the community.
What were some things we could have done to build up our defenses better at some of these congregate living centers, senior homes, places like that? Were there any things we could have done to shore up our defenses there?
So I think, again, hindsight is 20/20. I mean, we can think of all kinds of things that could have changed the trajectory of the infection, but I think we know that we need dedicated staff in our long-term care facilities whose primary job is infection control. So there's a lot to appreciate. I think something that's pretty basic is just vaccinology, being able to understand what vaccines are, what they do, why they are of benefit, and being able to have people accept how much vaccines have advanced our society to the point that we embrace vaccines when they do come online to help protect people from the diseases that they are intended to prevent.
In 2014, in the state's pandemic preparedness plan, the playbook, it said that misinformation trends must be identified quickly and rectified. Okay, how did the internet complicate your ability to communicate with the public in a clear way?
No, definitely. Like the salacious, very, very over-the-top stories, like those gain traction like that. And they pick up steam and they grow. And so when you're chasing that, it's like just such an uphill climb, But I think if there was just a better foundation of what people understood about vaccines, but really understanding the role that vaccines have played as one of the top innovations in medical history of the last century, I think having that more top of mind instead of something where vaccines don't really matter that much and you can choose to go for it or not, it doesn't really matter, that cost us a lot.
To someone who might have been young and healthy or who might have contracted the coronavirus, if they're looking at this decision about whether or not to get vaccinated and they say, well, the vaccine is going to give me the antibodies, but I already had it, so my body has antibodies, what would you tell that person? Should they get the vaccine, and why is it different or safer for them than just being exposed to the virus before?
Yeah, and so I know that the CDC did recommend that people get vaccinated even if they had the disease, because when you think about people who had the disease, there were many different buckets. Some people found out that they were positive because they tested, maybe because someone around them was. So maybe they didn't develop symptoms, but they actually turned out to have a positive test. Some people actually had an illness, maybe it was super mild. Some people maybe had a significant illness, and anywhere along that spectrum. And again, with a brand new virus where you're not clear if the person who was completely asymptomatic would actually develop antibodies and have that same robust response as someone who actually got very ill and then overcame it, when you don't know for sure, it makes sense. Here is something, a specified amount, everybody's getting it. We know that this causes a reaction and stimulates that immune response. instead of guessing that maybe you did, you didn't, this is the thing that we're sure of. And so I think that is kind of the foundation under saying everyone does, because it is true that in other diseases, you want either infection or the vaccine. But again, with a new virus that you're learning as you're going, trying to protect as many people as possible, you err on the side of caution.
All right. Well, Dr. Ezike, thank you, and congratulations on entering phase 5.
That's great. No, the pandemic's not over, but I'm really looking forward to us having an incredible summer. I think it's really important that people realize that, you may be able to put away your mask in many situations, and you might see others that still have it on, and we can't be involved with mask shaming. Nobody knows what individuals' risk tolerance is, or what their specific risk is, or what medications or what situations they find themselves, or who they have at home that they're trying to protect. So it's going to be very individual as people make the appropriate calculations and try to do what's best for themselves and their family. And everybody needs the space and the respect to be able to do that.
Great. Yeah, a little dose of kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
Illinoisans are celebrating the state's reopening tomorrow. The effects of COVID-19 are still haunting people to this day. WMBD's Matt Sheehan sat down with multiple COVID-19 long haulers whose message to Americans is that this isn't over.
I have 3 wonderful boys and a wonderful husband, and I'm not going to see them again.
That's Michelle Dreyer, a sleep tech at Unity Point Health, and those were the thoughts rolling through her head as she was getting rolled into the emergency room last May.
It was horrifying. I mean, my husband was the one that brought me to ER, and then, he couldn't come in with me.
Michelle was on a ventilator for 5 days, having to rely on her doctor to communicate with her family. She says she lost her hair from COVID and to this day still deals with brain fog. But the worst part, she says,
not knowing if you were ever going to see your family again.
And she's not alone. Yancey Reynolds, an active 49-year-old, contracted the virus just before Christmas. Yancey tells me she's starting to get back to normal, but there's still a lot of challenges she faces on a daily basis.
Memory loss, stamina, fatigue, just not really able to be myself yet.
Yancey was in the hospital for a few days and then put on oxygen afterwards. Her message for Illinoisans:
still take it serious, still be cautious.
And while just months ago we thought our hospitals would be overrun with COVID patients,
I was afraid I was going to say, we can't care for that patient.
Dr. Samir Seder, the chief medical officer at Unity Point Health, says there is hope.
There is a feeling of accomplishment right now regarding everything we had to do to get the hospitals ready to care for the number of patients that we had to care for.
Dr. Seder actually got COVID-19 from working at the hospital. He said it took 2 months for him to get back to normal.
Truly being isolated because you're sick and you don't want to infect your wife or your kids was a little different.
Dr. Seder says one thing the pandemic has taught him is America needs more nurses. He credits the progress the United States has seen to the success of the vaccine and the fearless dedication of medical professionals.
There was a true emergency, a true pandemic, which we hopefully won't see again, but people stepped up.
Dreyer's head doctor on the floor she works on ended up being her primary doctor when she was on a ventilator. She agrees with Dr. Seder.
What do you think kind of got you through this entire thing?
The love and support from my family, the prayers, and of course just the wonderful care from the doctors and nurses.
We're hearing from some of Illinois' healthcare heroes that have not only been watching the coronavirus trends, but also helping those in need. And now they're looking ahead to what comes next for the state of Illinois. Joining us now, we have Ben Johnson, a primary charge nurse at OSF St. Francis Medical Center, as well as Christina Gerlach, a crisis services manager at Unity Point Health, Unity Place, Julie Hess, the administrator at Grandview Alzheimer's Special Care Center, and Dr. James Nevin Jr., Vice President and Associate Chief Medical Officer of Carl Roman Medical Center and Carl Eureka Hospital. Thank you all so much for being here today. Dr. Nevin, let's start with you. So I pulled a couple of numbers from the Illinois Department of Public Health, and we're told that just over 5 million people in the state of Illinois have been fully vaccinated. That breaks down to about 40% of the population. But there are some new COVID variants we're hearing about, most recently identified out of Redidus Laboratories in Pekin, the Indian double mutant strand. So with those different factors, in your perspective, based on what you've seen, is the state of Illinois right on track to reopening? Are we moving too fast? What's your take on that?
Well, I think the vaccines in general have shown great efficacy. You know, there's been over 101 million vaccines given in the world with only 10,000 breakthroughs for, you know, severe disease. And so even though there are the variants and we don't have enough data yet, you know, that's something that the CDC, I think, will crunch and we'll learn more about. So I still encourage social distancing and wearing your mask in crowded spaces.
Some very good reminders as we continue to move forward. A lot of times we're talking about this data, the trends and the patterns that we're seeing, but sometimes what's left out is that human and emotional connection that people don't always see. Ben and Christina, I want to particularly turn to you all, working on the front lines, talking to patients, having these face-to-face interactions, sometimes in the most critical moments of need. Christina, let's start with you. What is the public not seeing when it comes to those interactions that you're still dealing with nowadays?
I think the biggest thing that we're bringing to the forefront in talking with patients and any client interaction, whether it's phone and in person, is just the normalcy of this is all new, you know, for us, and that it was taken very quickly. What we knew was the normal. And it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to not know, you know, is this safe? Is that safe? What do I need to do to protect my family? And we have found a lot of times that it's been very helpful in those client interactions to just kind of put that out there and say, look, we know this is an issue. We're all going through a change. You know, let's talk about it.
Ben, for yourself, I mean, you see these interactions on a day-to-day basis as well.
Yeah, it's very difficult to just kind of watch these people be in isolation for 20 plus days, and I think that the public isn't seeing that loss of human interaction. I mean, us and the doctors and the nurses are usually the only people that these patients see on a day-to-day basis. You know, we can offer FaceTime or you know, video chat as much as we can, but it's just, that's probably the thing the public doesn't see the most.
Ben, on that same point, I mean, Julie, we saw some heartbreaking pictures and photos earlier on during the pandemic of some of our elderly and our seniors that just weren't able to have those physical connections that I think a lot of times we take for granted. From your perspective, I mean, how are you all working to reunite families and reconnect people? To Christina's point, as we're just trying to all figure this out.
I think that the community living is different than the hospital situation because we are so much a family, and so they do get used to some of the same faces, but there's a lot of safe loving and sharing of that. And our residents, it really became the new norm for them. But our families were so gracious and have continued to be so gracious. And so we're just continuing to follow the rules, be as safe as we can, and hope for the best. I mean, I think we really see that we're turning a corner, and the families are excited about that as we are. We're excited to welcome them back in on a more of a normal basis with everybody on, you know, 24 hours a day instead of regularly scheduled visits.
Sure, taking those step-by-step processes. Dr. Nevin, again, based on your perspective, what does the road to reopening for the state of Illinois look like?
Well, I think it's going to be cautious. I think that the new normal is going to be different, and that we are going to look at more social distancing, more mask wearing. Personally, this was the healthiest year I've ever had. You know, I didn't have my common cold, I didn't have my sore throat, and I've seen that with many, many others. And I believe that we need to look at this as moving from a pandemic to an endemic, that it's going to be with us for a long, long time. And, you know, if I would even ask Ben if he's seen any flu-related illnesses in the ICU? And he'd probably say, not many, not like he usually does.
Sorry to step on Dr. Knapp. I saw 0 this year, which is, you know, the previous year working in the medical ICU, we deal with flu, and you know that was our main illness in the fall or in the winter, and we didn't have any this year.
Some very good things to keep in mind as we move forward. Again, trying to maybe relearn some new habits and what that looks like. Ben Johnson, Christina Gerlach, Julie Hess, and Dr. James Evan Jr. Thank you all so much for your time and all you're doing for this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching Road to Reopening, a special presentation from WMBD News.
When did you know how grim things might start to look?
I received from the scientists at Argonne University of Illinois a projection of the number of people who would die if we didn't put a stay-at-home order in place.
And they're studying this based on what they've seen in Europe or in Asia?
Correct. They were taking data that they had seen from across the globe, and they had also seen the data that we were gathering in Illinois. And even though there were only dozens of cases at that point, they could see how fast it was moving from one person to another, and how fast people were getting sick.
There was urgency.
They expressed real urgency, and they came to me with a set of projections. They came with a study that showed us, among other things, that in the city of Chicago, just to give you one area of the state, that we could see 20,000 deaths by August of 2020 if we did not put a stay-at-home order in place.
It's a stunning number.
It is a stunning number, 20,000 people in a few months. What would happen over the course of a year? And we didn't know whether we'd have vaccines or not. So it was my job, you know, whether people liked it politically or not. And I didn't think about the politics. I was just focused on saving lives. That's my job as governor, right? You run for office thinking I want to make people's lives better. You want people to be able to send their kids to college. You want people to be able to afford a home, better job, a higher wage.
Nobody campaigns on a stay-at-home order.
Nobody campaigns thinking about a global pandemic is going to come and you're going to have to do things to keep people alive.
Would you have made that stay-at-home order statewide again on March 20th if you had to do over again?
There are an awful lot of things, Mark, that you could look back and in hindsight say, should I have done this, should I have done that? We operated on the best information that was available at the time and got the best doctors advising us and the best scientists advising us. And I had to make decisions because every minute counted.
That sounds like a yes, that you would do it again.
All I can tell you is that I suppose there are things that you might do differently if you said, well, with what I know now, is there something different I would have done then? I just can't look back like that. What I have to think about is, in the moment with the best information available, how do I keep people safe?
What are you doing now to make sure that this will never happen again? The statewide shutdowns, all of that.
Well, there's nothing I can do to prevent another pandemic. That's not something that
the way we
state has
react
the
to
capability to do. Certainly we should react differently. Let's start with this. We should never have a president like we had last year. That president was terrible for America. People died as a result of his intransigence, of his denying the existence of this, calling it a hoax, saying it was going to disappear, not preparing and not helping states and real people all across this nation. I mean, we had to go it alone. And we did that. We succeeded at that.
You're also operating in Illinois among 49 other governors who have a varying degree of politics of their own, and for them it's easy to say, or maybe it was easier, more popular to say, we're going to reopen, we're going to open faster. We didn't see, for example, Florida, I think, took that tack. They tried to open up faster. They had fewer deaths overall at the end of all this than Illinois did.
That's not true, but
per capita,
what is true is that you saw different states, and this is something we don't know about this coronavirus still. We saw different states having waves of coronavirus hitting their people and people dying at different moments. When Illinois was doing very well during the summer, what was happening in Florida, Texas, and Arizona? People were dying in droves.
The waves happened in different times for sure.
But they did, and my point is that and we don't know, for example, does climate have something to do with it? Does humidity have something to do with it? We really don't know, because you could look state by state and see, very different outcomes from one place to another. Nobody knew. Look what happened in New York. Look at what happened in New York. Who knew that New York was going to go off the charts? It wasn't just New York City, the entire state of New York. Our job was to keep people alive. Our job was to keep people safe. And by the way, our economy actually did, comparatively reasonably well in the context of people having to lose their jobs as a result of a stay-at-home order or as a result of this virus having a terrible effect across our state.
As we talk to you now, we still haven't recovered half of the jobs that we lost during the pandemic in Illinois.
Right.
Do you believe that you're addressing that problem, the reopening and the restoration of our economy, with the same urgency that you had on March 20th when you had to give that order to stay home?
We are acting with great urgency. I want people to get back to work. And remember, you're trying to balance interests. Over the course of the last number of months, we had an upsurge of coronavirus in Illinois. And in some places they didn't. But we had an upsurge. We had to deal with that. That has an effect. But here's what we're doing now, right? We've made, basically, because our economy actually got on quite a roll, we added about 93,000 jobs in the first 3 months. Think about that. I mean, if you could do that on an annualized basis, we'd be in great shape. We're hoping that that's what's happening over the next few months as well. On June 11th, we're going to have a complete reopening, phase 5 in Illinois, which I think is a moment to rejoice at.
Do you believe today, after what you went through the last year and a half, that a politician is the best messenger in a public health crisis compared to, say, a doctor?
Well, virtually every day you saw that I stood at that podium with Dr. Ezike. And I brought doctors from Illinois and from other parts of the state, not just from Chicago, but other parts of the state, and even from outside the state, to make sure that we were making the points to people on the basis of science. And that was an important role that I played, communicating to people and using the facts to communicate with them, being transparent about all of it. That's tremendously important. That is something the CDC actually trains people to do, doctors to do, and it's something that I got on the job training doing.
Well, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You're watching Road to Reopening, a special presentation from WMBD News.
Welcome back to our special report, Road to Reopening.
As the state prepares to end COVID restrictions, local educators look forward to getting back to in-person learning in the fall. Community leaders teamed up to provide an expanded summer program to help students catch up. Crowded classrooms and lively conversations replaced by quiet, empty hallways when COVID hit. At-home remote learning became the new normal for students.
You know, as a parent, it was a transition for us as well. Now we were more so becoming our children's teachers and tutors, all while having to juggle work as well.
Alignment Rockford Executive Director Anisha Gremmett is a mother of 2 teenage boys. She worried about her kids falling behind. That concern for students who may be lagging was shared district-wide, especially for kids without parental support at home. Community leaders came together to brainstorm the best way to help students recover from the challenges of the pandemic.
All we need is you who are watching to step up and say you want to be part of this.
More than 30 community partners did. They're all taking part in Live, Learn, Play, a summer learning program that merges educational curriculum with recreation offered at a variety of camps.
There is learning wherever you go. When you go to the park, you're learning. When you're at the museum, you're learning. When you're playing football, you're learning, and we can enrich those learnings.
In addition to summer camps, local business partners are committed to helping high school students who need credit recovery.
Our major partner, the Rockford Park District, who will be employing a lot of students, a lot of high school students, and being able to offer that enrichment as well.
RPS 205 teachers and staff will be on hand at Park District camps and events all summer.
I just want parents to understand that no matter where your child is enrolled this summer, that they're going to get an added boost of numeracy and literacy in their activities, and it's going to be fun, I promise.
Live, Learn, Play organizers hope the summer program motivates students to want to return to school in the traditional setting this fall.
When the world turned upside down about 15 months ago, schools all over Illinois scrambled to adjust. Administrators needed to figure out how to keep kids and staff safe and how to still educate students. Peoria County's regional superintendent, Beth Kreider, supports nearly 20 districts with 28,000 students. Dr. Aaron Jarrett is in charge of that many students in his Rockford district alone, the third biggest school district in Illinois. And Don Gillingham is executive director of Rockford Lutheran School. They've all had to deal with this in different ways. Beth, this, particularly in your county, was not one size fits all.
Oh no, Peoria County is a microcosm of the state. I have a large urban district with Peoria Public Schools. That is half of Peoria County. The other half of Peoria County is made up of schools like Dunlap, which was more of a suburban district, and then I have small rural districts. Talk about diverse needs. You have equity issues, you have rural issues with broadband. So what it comes down to is matching the resources that are out there, connections to the people that we need, to the districts that need them. Because our districts have been different all across Peoria County. Many of our districts have been in face-to-face schooling from the beginning of last year. Peoria Public Schools, however, did not bring their high schoolers back to face-to-face instruction until after Christmas. So we've been all over with different ways of dealing with the pandemic.
Dr. Jarrett, you and I had a conversation back in March before everything shut down. I don't think either of us thought restrictions would last this long.
It was so unprecedented, Eric. We really didn't know what to expect. And all we knew was that we were getting very serious information from medical experts.
So as things developed, how did you sort of roll with the changes?
Our number one guiding principle was we wanted to give families a choice. And so what that meant is we, instead of running one 28,000 student district, we were running two 14,000 student districts, because about 50% of our students were in person and about 50% were remote. And all students had some element of remote instruction because we had some modified schedules. And so this was unprecedented for our teachers, it was unprecedented for our students and our families, it was unprecedented for our staff. So it was just a huge, huge challenge.
Don, you've had challenges too, but it was a little bit different for you and your, 900 or so students. That will make actually this fall seem like nothing new to you.
You can't tell because I still have my mask on, but I'm smiling because we have been open all year and we're going to be open again. It will be easier for us because social distancing will be a little more comfortable as kids get back into school. We will provide some flex options, but it will be synchronous learning only. Kids will be able to Zoom if they have a health issue or if they have a contract with the teacher. There's a profile. We learned a lot this year about who can be successful with this kind of learning. And if a student fits the profile and they want to reduce their risk by coming in only 3 days a week, or if they want to try out a college style schedule where they're not in class 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, we can make that possible.
Beth, some of those changes that aren't strictly learning based really need to stick around, right?
If we just go back to school in August and say, it's time for algebra, let's go. And we don't take time to acknowledge what we've all been through, to process some of what happened and talk it through and engage in some activities that kind of tap into that social and emotional learning, we won't be ready for the academic learning.
Don, as a small private school, you've also faced some financial struggles.
We reduced the tuition this year for families who were at home. And we paid a stipend to our teachers because they, in essence, had an overload because they were dealing with those students. So this was a very expensive year for us. It cost us a loss of income and it cost us an extra expense to provide the program to families. But we're committed to families and we had the ability to do that because of a number of factors, and we made that commitment and got it done.
Dr. Jarrett, how do you make up for some of the learning loss students experience? I mean, is there a real need to play catch up this fall?
Step one, the best learning recovery we think we could do was to get students back in person during the school year. So we were excited that we were able to increasingly get students back this year. Then we went into the summer and have huge participation increases in our summer learning. And yes, as we get into the fall and into future school years and future summers, we know we're going to continue to have to do some catching up with some of our students. But this will be a long-term commitment for us getting the students the support they need.
You know, one thing all three administrators have in common is that they say that they can't give enough credit to their local health departments. Those departments they were keeping the information flowing. And during that time, you know, things were pretty dynamic, but that info actually helped the districts make decisions that maximize not only safety, but also the learning environment.
Coming up next, we look at the economic impact COVID has had across Illinois.
You're watching Road to Reopening, a special presentation from WMBD News.
Mask mandates, gathering limits, and social distancing guidelines are all being lifted. It's the beginning of the end of the life we've known for the last year.
It is a huge sigh of relief for business owners who have been struggling to survive. I spoke with a couple of them in the Quad Cities who managed to not only survive, but thrive during the pandemic.
COVID-19 has had a huge impact on weddings and the businesses that help couples celebrate their big day.
A big part of my photography is having that contact with people, you know, creating memories.
When couples started to reschedule their wedding day, Jerry Woods started to get nervous.
The whole part of non-communication with other people it was devastating.
Woods is a self-taught photographer. Most of his photo shoots are for big celebrations, events like graduations and weddings.
You're talking about a moment, you know, a memory.
The phone stopped ringing when COVID hit.
When the Quad Cities got put on lockdown, I went out early, you know, before the sun comes up, right when the sun comes up, to capture pictures.
He started taking pictures outside, showing the beauty around the Quad Cities. Those pictures are now displayed at the Riverfront Grill in Rock Island, and they're selling like hotcakes.
Overly blessed. Never would I have thought.
Down the road at AM Guitar Works.
Good, do it again. You're doing awesome.
Alan Morrison was scrambling when the pandemic hit.
I started getting phone calls from parents saying, we're going to take a break till this blows over. And I said, hold on, we're going to try something different.
That's something different. Virtual lessons using FaceTime or Zoom.
And like that? Yeah, very good.
The virtual lessons are not only a way to stay connected, but his business is now growing.
We have a student in Seward, Nebraska. We have a student in Wyoming.
Virtual guitar lessons are becoming so popular, Morrison had to hire more teachers during the pandemic.
So we went from 3 instructors with 60 students to almost 100 students and 5 instructors. We're going to start with a G5 chord. It's great that my business grew, but even better is that we were able to be a bright spot in these students' lives.
Several construction companies in the Quad Cities say the pandemic had no impact on them or actually had a positive impact on their business. Now more on the economic impact across the state from Jim Needleman.
And thank you. Researchers will likely spend years going over data to determine the overall economic impact of the pandemic. We all have examples of businesses big and small that didn't survive. The Opportunity Insights Economic Tracker Project out of Harvard University records the changes in small businesses that are open as of May 12th of this year compared to January of last year. And statewide, the number of small businesses that are open is down by 39.5%, down 40% in Champaign County, off 29% in Peoria County, down 17% in Winnebago County, and almost 13% lower in Rock Island County. We'll talk about that impact with Quad Cities Chamber of Commerce President Paul Rumler, Chair of the Rockford Area Venues and Entertainment Authority Craig Thomas, as well as small business entrepreneurs Keely Letourneau of Morton near Peoria and Zong Pham of Champaign. Craig Thomas, I'm going to start with you. We could certainly spend hours listing the concerts, sporting events, festivals, and more that were canceled in Illinois because of the pandemic. Can you put a general price on what the losses meant in Rockford, and how do you get back on track in your organization with the state about to reopen?
Well, you put the economic impact in the millions and the millions upon millions. Now, from our perspective, we were able to shut down, significantly cut our costs, but the real burden to the community is that we're a catalyst of activity for the downtown Rockford. So the bars, the restaurants, all of the ancillary businesses, and unfortunately, they paid the price. When we weren't able to sell tickets and have people come to shows at our facilities, they didn't have people coming into their facilities before and after those events. And so while we've been fortunate through a lot of smart management of our management team over at the facilities to weather the storm, and we're excited to be reopening and get back to what we were doing, some of those businesses that relied upon us aren't so fortunate.
How do you get back on track? Are you ground zero at this point?
Yeah, we are. We had a shortened AHL hockey season without fans. There were a little bit of fans we were allowed in the last couple of games, but we have a lot on the books as far as shows and entertainment. So we're looking forward. There's a lot of pent up desire on people's part now that they feel that it's safe to get back to some sense of normalcy and entertainment activities. And so we're working with all of our local partners to make that happen sooner rather than later, and we're excited about it. And we look forward to, again, being a key driver of traffic and activity to the downtown businesses.
I want to bring our small business owners into this because they play certainly a big role. Zong Pham, you and your husband started a nursery called Plantify during the pandemic, selling indoor plants. What gave you both the courage to do it? How much do you think the reopening of the state's economy will affect what you do?
Yes. So, to be honest, we didn't plan to open the business in the middle of the pandemic. It just happened. So we did all our planning prior to the lockdown. And then during the lockdown, we had a really hard conversation of, okay, are we going to move forward with it or not? Because, you know, things don't look great, business shut down, people had to stay at home. But then we realized that because the ways people of life change, there are also new opportunities in offering them the solutions to the problems that they now face, right? People are staying at home, the stress and anxiety level rise up. And so we thought that plants are a great solution to that, right? Plants can help ease the street, bring down the anxiety level. It makes people feel better and happier and make the environment inside the house more tranquil. And so we went ahead with the opening of our business. It was June of last year, so it was right after the lockdown was lifted. And since then, we managed to thrive despite of the difficulties of people not being able to do shopping and to live life the way that we used to. So with the opening, we're hoping that there will be a lot more traffic into the store, and people will be, looking for other things that are not houseplants related. So we are thinking of expanding our products to home decor and gifts, so that we will be able to meet the new demands now that people are not staying at home and they are slowly moving back to the normal life that they used to have. It's a great success story. And Keely Letourneau, you have a great success and survival story as well. You own a sweet shop called Sucre Sweets and Socials in Morton, Illinois. I loved reading about your new creations of a hot chocolate bomb and a cotton candy bomb. My mouth waters just thinking about both. How did you come up with this survivalist mentality as a business owner? What will you take from that with you once the state reopens fully?
Sure. Yeah. When we originally opened our business back in 2017, our biggest generator of income was the event space. And so we host a lot of parties and do a lot of stuff for the private events that we have. And then in 2020, when that all got shut down, right in the middle of the busiest season with weddings and graduations and things, we decided, well, we're either going to have to adapt to survive or fail. So we kind of just changed up and decided that we would start really focusing more on the sweet stuff. So we started adding in a whole bunch of different kinds of sweets, following the trends, creating our own new things, offering delivery, online, gift options, and a whole bunch of different and new ways to get people to be able to have their sweet treats, because everybody likes sweets. So when you're shut down and in a pandemic and you can't get out, we wanted to be able to make sure that we could still get you those things. So we did a lot of deliveries. And like I said, we just brought in a whole new line of sweet products and tried to come up with new creations and things that would make people happy. We're really looking forward to expanding that in this year. As soon as everything opens up, we're hoping to see a lot of new faces and a lot of new people coming in, trying out our creations, and also enjoying our event space and celebrating life with us.
And sweets certainly are a comfort food during the pandemic, no doubt. Paul Rumler, I haven't forgotten about you. You work with businesses in Illinois and Iowa in this border community of the Quad Cities. Business owners in Iowa have been able to serve customers in person for months. How hard do you think it will be for the businesses in Illinois to get back up to speed and compete with their counterparts in Iowa?
Well, I know that Illinois businesses are a resilient bunch and they're going to figure it out. But I'd say that they're starting from a deeper hole in what it should have been. We've seen the service sector, the hospitality sector, and restaurants really impacted more greatly in Illinois than what we saw in Iowa, based on the fact that they could begin to operate faster in Iowa. And the businesses that, say, corporate offices were able to come back sooner in Iowa And that helped the spin-off effect, as you heard earlier talked about in Rockford. We lack that in Illinois. So you're starting to see a workforce challenge exist all over, but Iowa had a head start over Illinois in attracting them back. So the workers are in high demand right now. So I think that the pressure on the Illinois businesses to come back is going to be a little bit higher and a little bit more challenging for them.
There are certainly high hopes in Illinois. Paul Rumler, Craig Thomas, Keely Letourneau, and Zhang Pham, thank you all so much for the conversation. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight for this Road to Reopening special.
It's been a long 15 months, and while there may still be some bumps in the road, we can all be hopeful for better times ahead. We hope you have a safe and wonderful summer.
Have a good night.